So I'm sure all of you are aware of the bombings that happened in Boston. So I'm actually from Boston, so this affected me very deeply. I didn't grow up in Boston, but I went to school there. And actually, whenever people ask me where I'm from, I always say I'm from Boston. Because I really feel like that's my home. That's where I grew up as a person. That's where I became an adult. And that's where I discovered my dreams. That's where I met my husband and where we started our relationship together. And yeah, actually I have a few friends and even my own family that was in that area when it happened. One of my friends crossed the finish line half an hour before the bombs went off. Another one of my friends was so close that she almost got knocked over by the blow. And my own brother was working on that block in a restaurant when it happened, and so he experienced the people screaming and running into the restaurant for shelter. So it's been very traumatic for them and for me because it's my home, even though I wasn't there. And I felt a lot of hopelessness and a lot of grief that something so horrible could happen in my own home. And also grief because of the pain and the resentment that caused this, that the people who did this, they feel pain. That's why they did this. And that made me feel pain. And I also remembered that this happens in certain parts of the world all the time. There's some parts of the world where this is a weekly occurrence. It's nothing new for them. And when I hear it on the news, it's always been, just kind of another piece of news. But now I realized I need to feel more compassion and that that's their home. And that there are brothers and sisters all around the world who are feeling this pain all the time, and that maybe this can be at least a chance for me and for some of us to feel more compassion and to feel that pain and to feel a wantingness to heal that pain. So anyways, but the way I could get out of this feeling of grief was just remembering that even in the worst of times, and sometimes especially in the worst of times, we can see the face of God in our family and our friends and even in strangers who just do amazing things in this kind of time. So this is about seeing the face of God through humanity.
Sudden rush of sin, and it doesn't even sting any less. For those who are hurt, for those whose hurt drives them to do the worst, I can only pray to not give in. But when I see your face, I know there's hope for the human race. When I see your face, when I see your face, I know there's hope for a better place. When I see your face, see your face, I
Doing today?
Good.
All right. So my printer didn't work last night, but my phone works great. So I'm not texting up here if you get confused. Just read my notes. But we're glad to have you all here today. Whether it's your first time here or you've been coming for years, we're just glad to have you here. And we want to really welcome you into our community and remind us that we are a community. Brothers and sisters here to support one another. This last week, I think many of you know, I spent some time, Reverend Akami, myself, Pastor Lena, we went to New York City. And I heard about your weather here, so this is like the first time ever that I'm glad I was in New York versus being here. But I really enjoyed it. We went upstate New York, so that's even a lot better.
Wow.
I'm really struggle with big cities, actually. I like to be in nature. So I love being out there. I walked on a historical route. It's declared a historical route. It's called Father's Trail. We walked on there one evening at about midnight in the rain. My wife was not happy that I was going out, but my brother insisted that we go for a rain walk on that trail. So it was really fun. It was a really nice time, but the point of this week, that past week was it was a pastor's conference. It was called Reinvent Yourself. So we spent the time really trying to understand where we've been and understand about where our hearts have been. And all these pastors from around the country had come and they've been trying to do good. And we try and be good. We really do try. But many times our resentments or different difficulties make us to react in ways that we don't encourage others to behave in, right? So we spent the whole first day actually just dealing with our own personal issues. And as pastors, that was really a great thing. And I think for many of us who like to bottle our feelings inside and give a happy face to other people, it was so enjoyable actually for me. It was actually really difficult and really out of my comfort zone, but to really understand where I've been and to understand that I'm not, necessarily a negative or angry person, but I'm just dealing with things sometimes, That sometimes in our lives that we're so frustrated or so struggling to do things right that we react in ways that we don't endorse others to react in, right? So we spent the whole day just looking at these things, looking at our lives. And this is something they did with us because they said, if you want to help others, you have to be able to resolve these things. You have to find restoration within yourself. You have to resurrect yourself from time to time and to allow yourself to process these hurts and these feelings of pain, of despair, of loneliness. And so we did that in order that we could give that to other people. And so I was really happy to be there. And the whole day we talked about things like expectations, how we have these big expectations and then the result doesn't actually come, right? And how that hurts us and that damages us as individuals. People wrote down, they said, I thought when the Messiah comes again, that the world would be perfect within 3 years or 7 years or some time period, right? I know my mother-in-law always said when she first joined the church, she would look in the newspaper every day and look for the headline to say the world is restored. She thought it was going to happen overnight. And so many times we have these expectations that something's going to happen and it's going to change us, right? And when it doesn't happen, when that change doesn't come, we feel despair, or we feel like we did something wrong. And this builds up inside of us and it becomes a hurt. It becomes a resentment. It becomes an anger. And so the first day we just dealt with how do you process those things? How do you help others process those things? So I hope we can do a better job now, Reverend Akami and ourselves, at helping you from what we learned. And it was so powerful for us. But the greatest thing was, throughout the whole day, we kind of hashed up all these old feelings, all this negative feeling, all the times we felt abandoned or despair or that we weren't good enough, that we weren't doing enough. And we'd kind of been beating ourselves up in a way throughout the day. But in the evening, actually, it's such a beautiful thing. We sat in a circle. They had us sit in a circle, and we all faced outward, and we all closed our eyes. And we're dealing with all this pain, all this suffering, all this heartache. And we're sitting in that circle, and they would call a group of us to the middle. And they'd have that group, and they'd tell them, go around, and you're going to touch someone that fills one of these qualities that we talk about. So they'd say something like, touch someone on the shoulder who has inspired you. And you're sitting there at this point at such a low as you've gone through all of your miserable failures in your life. And you're thinking, no one's going to touch me. And I was just sitting there, and I don't go for cheesy things, really. This would normally be classified as very cheesy for me. But I guess in that state of despair that I was in, I was open to it. And I just closed my eyes, and it was amazing, the feeling of joy that just overwhelmed you, how you just tingled when someone would touch you. And in essence say, you inspire me. You encourage me. You do have a big heart. All these beautiful things. And just for about an hour, we were just processing these things. It was so beautiful. And, for me, it kind of finalized with this idea that, we're not good or bad, right? We're not always a failure. We're not always a success. But we're on a journey, and different people are going to encourage us to be our best, or are going to take us down to be our worst, right? Certain interactions we have with others. Even us as faithful followers of God, as church members, sometimes we push someone in a way that they react in their worst way, right? Sometimes we cause that hurt, that inflict that pain on other people. And so it really reminded me how careful we have to be about how we're guiding people, how we're helping people, and how sometimes we're hurting people. Not because we're evil, but because we're human beings on a course, on a path. So I was, during the week, I had a really stimulating, deep conversation. I was talking with my sister-in-law, and we were talking about kids' cartoons. One of those really deep conversations. And so we were talking about how powerful cartoons are for kids. And we were talking about my little nephew and the kind of cartoons he watches. And we were discussing how it influences a child, that in a cartoon, there's very clear good, and there's always very clear evil, right? I watched, as growing up, I watched a lot of Ninja Turtles. Some people watched Ninja Turtles here growing up, they're younger. I watched a lot of Ninja Turtles, and it was really clear, right? You had the Ninja Turtles, who were always good. They were always helping people. Whatever they were doing, you knew it was going to be good. And then you had Shredder and the Foot, and they were clearly evil. Everything they did was bad, right? Everything they did. You would never see Shredder involved in a humanitarian effort, right? You would never see the Foot trying to help other people. And so growing up, it was really clear, there's bad people in this world and there's good people in this world. And that's the message that we're sending children. Unfortunately, a lot of us, we carry this message throughout our life. Sometimes our church environment endorses this kind of heart towards other people, right? Let's clearly define these people are bad and these people are good. It makes life real simple, real neat, right? But that's not always the case, right? Life is a little more complicated, right? There's a lot of influences in our life. So I watched a cartoon of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and it was very clear. But then I watched the movie. Did anyone ever watch the movie? Yes, okay, a couple people. I encourage you to watch that movie. That is I even watched it recently and I'm like, wow, this is not a little kid's movie. This is really deep. Leonardo's crying in it. It really gets some emotional parts. But the thing that I noticed was they really changed this good and evil in the movie because they wanted to make it realistic. They knew the cartoony idea of everything being black and white is a cartoon, that's not real. So they tried to make it more realistic so older people could appreciate it. And they have this guy named Danny on there. And Danny's this teenager, and his mom is not in the picture of his life. He's being raised by his dad. And his dad is really busy at work all the time. And so you see Danny as he starts off being a good boy. And then he's offered to join the Foot. You know, the Foot that we always thought was so evil in the cartoons. And he's this good kid. He's just a teenager that gets a little confused. And he doesn't have a lot of love. He doesn't have a lot of support in his life. And he starts pickpocketing. He steals Walkmans, because those were real cool back then. You know, he starts stealing things, and he doesn't even notice that he's becoming such a bad person. But then he starts noticing they keep increasing what they want him to do. And they try and get him to hurt other people. And they try and, get them to start doing evil things. And the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles luckily come and they save him from becoming fully evil, right? But it showed in that real life is not black and white. We don't live in a world where people are either good or they're evil. But they're making decisions. They're making decisions that bring them closer to God or pushes them further from God, right? We know from the divine principle that sin is defined as something that brings us further from the will of God, right? It's not real black and white. It can be a little fuzzy sometimes. And so when we look at the world, we have to put on a new lens, a new heart towards other people to say, why are they the way they are? But everything happens in a moment. In a moment, we make these choices. In a moment, we make these decisions to either love someone or to hurt someone. In the book, True Family Gateway to Heaven, it says, in this way, the realm of victory is determined in one moment. It is the same with the historical realm of victory and the cosmic realm of victory. Those who know the infinite value of one bright, shining moment and live accordingly can become great people, even saints or God's sons and daughters. In this way, the junction of life and death is crossed in a single moment. So here it reminds us that victory, that joy, that being a good person happens in a single moment. But that act of pain, that act of rage, that act of inflicting pain on other people, right? It happens in a single moment. And so we have to be so careful in protecting our hearts. But not just us. We have to be so careful in the way we deal with other people. In the way that we love other people. In the way that we support other people. That good and evil is not a black and white thing. That someone that did something bad is not now an evil person. Actually, during the conference, we were there and, there's a ministry called Back on Track in our church. It's a ministry to help people that did something against their conscience, that did something that they regret. And they're helping these people rebuild their lives and rebuild their confidence and see themselves again as a son or daughter of God. It was so painful, though, to see. Many times we look at people that have sexual relationships outside of marriage as these evil people. And we'd rather kick them out of our church. Honestly, right? We have this attitude sometimes. We want to sort the good from the bad. We want to keep the bad as far away from us as possible. But this Back on Track ministry believes that people are hurt and they need our love even more. That those people need that encouragement even more. And what they told us was actually almost all these sisters that are coming there that had engaged in a sexual act, that made them, separated from their full value, right? That separated them from God. And they talked to these sisters. And time after time, instant after instant, you know what happened? They were raped. These people that we write off as being so evil, they were in a bad situation. And their joy, their love, their hope was taken away from them in a single instant. And that hurt my heart so much that oftentimes we might have looked at that person It's being evil. But can you imagine the suffering going on in their heart? The pain in their heart. And they have no one to turn to. No one to encourage them. No one to lift them up. And so that's why I'm so careful about saying someone is good or evil. But to look at us is all on a journey with a chance to do good or evil. You know, in a moment, everything changes though. And I was thinking about our life. And it's like, you know, we're balancing. We're always balancing. We're trying to walk. And we're trying to be good. But we often have these pushes, right? You know, we get tight on money. Or we get hurt. Someone doesn't fulfill a promise. Someone doesn't get through to us. Someone doesn't come through for us. We're tight on money. We're stressed out. We're tired. We're exhausted. We have a baby that won't sleep. And we're exhausted. And one little thing pushes us over the edge, right? Knocks us over. Are we evil? We're hurting individuals. We have a lot of hurting individuals out in this world that are trying so desperately to stay on. And one interaction of goodness, one act of love from you might make all the difference. You know, we had this terrible incident this past week, right? That Sarah mentioned. She wrote this song. She said, can you imagine the hurt that was inflicted? The pain? All those people that were running, the 3 people that passed away. The countless people in the hospital. Those families that are broken, that are hurt. But she also reminded us, can you imagine the hurt that was in these 2 young men's hearts? That would cause them to take the lives of other people? That would make them feel the only way they could help someone is by destroying something? How messed up is the heart when you're in that position? That you're so much in despair that the only way that you feel you can get out is by destroying someone else. Our heart of salvation should reach out to those people. Our heart of love should be reaching out to those kinds of people. To give them another chance, to help them out of whatever despair it was. And to help them see their value. And that they do have some power besides destroying someone else. They could make a change, and it doesn't have to be at the expense of others. So, but in a single moment, everything changed for them. Everything changed. And we know from the principle that sin happens, right? Sin happens when we're disconnected from God. When we're disconnected from that love, when we're feeling that emptiness, when we're feeling that sorrow and we're looking for a way to fill it. We see that in the fall, right? Here is this archangel, this one that is loved by God so deeply. So deeply, and he loves that position. He loves to be with God. Suddenly 2 other people come into the picture, and he doesn't feel so special anymore. No one's there to encourage him, to lift him up. And in an act of loneliness, in an act of despair, he destroys someone else's life. This pain and this suffering is the cause of so many instances of sin, of evil. Right? We see it again as Jesus talks about the laborers. He talks about these 3 laborers that go, or these 3 instances of laborers. And there's a manager, he's going around, he's looking for someone to work for him. And the manager goes out and he talks to a few people. He said, hey, I'll give you $100 today. Something like that. It's probably in the form of talents, which I don't know the currency exchange rate. But something good, right? You work for me for a day, I'll pay you $100. They said, great, that's an awesome deal. I'm so happy. And they're working, they're having a good time. They're saying, we're getting a good paycheck at the end of the day. Life is pretty good. And then in the middle of the day, someone else comes in. The manager says, hey, I'll give you $100 to work for the rest of the day. Suddenly, these guys in the beginning look at the manager and say, what the heck? What the heck, man? You're ripping me off. They received so much blessing. They were given this gift. But then in this moment of despair, this moment where they lose their value or their sense of value, they're angry and they want to inflict pain on someone else. How close is it for each one of us to inflict pain on someone else instead of love? How close are we to that? And then we look at another story, and right after Adam and Eve, who are not able to love so well, they have 2 children, right? Actually, they have many children. We talked about this a few weeks ago. But they have Cain and Abel. And here's Cain, this young man. He wants to connect with God. He wants to make a relationship with God. And he goes out, he makes an offering. He says, God, this is what I got. I want to give this to you. For some reason or another, he's not accepted. And he feels so much pain, so much hurt. Like he's not valued. Like there's nothing to him. And so he's thinking about this, and God comes up to him and says, is it the right one? Yeah. Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? God could see the pain in his heart. God could see that he was miserable, that he was lonely. And that he was at a point of decision that would alter his life forever. If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. At this point, he has the opportunity to somehow connect with his brother, to find a way to resolve it. What would it have meant if Eve would have come to her son and said, I know that it wasn't accepted this time, but let's keep trying, let's keep working on this. Let's figure out what the problem was. Let's help each other out. What if Adam would have stood as a man, as a spiritual leader to his son, as a father, and encouraged his son, instead of putting him down, instead of letting him wallow in his agony and despair? What if Abel would have said, hey, you're my big brother, and I was only able to make this offering because of you? What if he could have encouraged his brother? In that moment, it might have changed everything. But of course, we know that story ends tragically. That he didn't have it in him to overcome him. He was on that balancing beam. If he did what was right, he would be accepted. If he did what was wrong, if he harbored those feelings, sin was going to take over his life. So we stand in a position to encourage people to get up off that ground, to come out of that despair and come into a new life. We talk many times about witnessing, about church growth. What does it really mean? It means reaching out to someone, pulling them out of their despair, and giving them hope for a new life. And that's what we're talking about. When we talk about church growth, it's not about filling up seats. It's not about new tithing units. It's about saving someone. It's about giving them that opportunity that was extended to each one of us. One pastor was sharing down there. He said, you know why I do what I do? And he showed a picture of himself from 20 years ago. He had this long, dark hair, dark beard. He's got tattoos. He looked like he would kill you in an alleyway. I mean, he looked tough. He said he was meaner than dirt. He said he was so filled with anger, so much resentment. But someone reached out to him. Someone said, I see something beneath you. And they encouraged him and they said, let me help you. Let me walk alongside you. He said, so why I do what I do is not to fill a seat, but because I know there's some 20-year-old kid out there that doesn't know whether life is worth living, that doesn't know how to handle these emotions of despair, of loneliness. He wanted to stop them from acting out in that pain and that suffering. and encourage them to live in a better way. And so each one of us has been given this spark of life, have been given this love. Mother said in Las Vegas, true mother, the wife of Reverend Moon, she said, don't forget, each one of your lives have been touched by Father Moon, have been touched by Reverend Moon, have been given that seed, that spark. Each one of you has a shred of his life in you. Nurture that seed and give that seed to other people. She wasn't talking about church growth. She was talking about saving people's souls, saving their hearts, lifting them out of despair, giving them hope. What about in our own families? What about with our own brothers and sisters, with our own sons and daughters, with our husband or wife? When they're going through that struggle, when they're going through that despair. You know, I see what happens in our life. You know, I get tired, I'm exhausted. And I don't love my wife as much as she's needed sometimes. But what does she do? Does she react to that? Put me down? Tell me I'm a miserable husband because I didn't love her enough that day? She encourages me. She tries to find out what's wrong. My wife's a beautiful person that's always trying to find how she can help, how she can solve a heart's problem. You know, how often do we, instead of loving each other, how often do we put down each other and drive each other a little bit further into the depths, a little bit further into knowing for sure I have no value. I thought I had no value. My dad sure showed me today. How tragic is it that we inflict that pain on one another by putting people in a box. You're good, you're evil. You're never going to amount to anything. You're never going to step up. But that one word of encouragement, that one act of love can save someone, can restore someone, can flip us all around. And so, brothers and sisters, I feel it's our responsibility. Our God-given grace was given to us so that we could give to other people, that we could save another soul. You know, and sometimes we question, why did God make us this way? Actually, He did it out of a deep love for us. He didn't make us perfect for a reason. It says here that God wanted us, right? God wanted us to be His co-creators in order to give them the creatorship and make them worthy to govern all things. God has human beings perfect themselves by accomplishing their own portion of responsibility until the end of their growing period. Right? So each of us has that opportunity. Adam and Eve stood as a blank slate with an opportunity to be the greatest parents of all mankind, to be a model example of how we love our children, of how we love our spouse, of how we perfect our character, how we take care of this world. But in their loneliness and their despair and their confusion, they stepped off the course. And God had to allow them to have that opportunity so that they could perfect their love. If they were going to make that offering, it would be out of love, not out of an order of a commandment. So what do we have to do, brothers and sisters? We have to go out, not because a principal told you to act like this, but because I loved you so much that I want you to live a better life. Not because there's a law written about not drinking under the age, but because I love my son so much that I don't want him to see him in that despair, in that pain, in that agony. We need to have a heart for other people that sees them as God sees them, not to put them in a box and destroy them, but to always lift them up. So brothers and sisters, as we go out this week, be mindful of our actions. Be mindful of the way that we treat the clerk that was a little bit slow to give us our burger. Be mindful of the guy that just cut you off. Be mindful When your husband forgets to take out the trash again. And let's love each other, let's support each other, let's raise each other up. Let's give each other the encouragement that we need to be the people that God intends us to be. And let's give that love out today. Let's give that love out tomorrow and throughout this week and throughout our lives. Brothers and sisters, I thank you so much for being here. I thank you for being an inspiration to me. But watching you as you've gone your course, if you've given your life over and over again to God, as you're trying so hard to pursue that life of love, that life of dignity, I'm amazed at you and you inspire me. And I hope that we can bring that inspiration outside of these four walls this week. Brothers and sisters, let's offer our hearts in prayer. Our beloved Heavenly Parent, God, we come to you this morning with hearts wide open, with eyes looking for your vision, with hands that are willing to do a new work if we can only get over the hurdles, if we can only get over the despair, if we can only get over the desperation, and that we can come back to you, God, that we can see in ourselves that we are not failures, we're not evil, we're not bad, we're on a journey, God, and we know that you love us. You love us so much, and you see such potential in each one of us, God. You see so much hope in our brothers and sisters and our sons and daughters. God, we hope that we can express that kind of hope. We can express that kind of love in our own lives. That we can be a model for this world, God. God, we pray for those in Boston today who are suffering with the loss of a loved one, who are confused at why these young men had to inflict this pain. What caused them to hurt so much? God, let us have a heart to save these people before they lose themselves, before they throw away their lives and the lives of others, God. God, we don't need a heart just for those that are good, that agree with us, but we need our hearts to expand to love those especially that don't agree with us, that hate us, that hate what we stand for, that hate you, God. Let us have a new heart for them, a new heart for this world, a new heart for your children. God, let us have a new heart for ourselves, God. Let us see ourselves the way that you see us, God. Let us see ourselves the way that you see us, God. And let us bring that out into this world. God, we thank you so much. We pray that this week brings you so much joy and hope and encouragement. We pray that our actions can support your will, God. And we just want to offer this Sunday morning to you, and I pray and offer this in all our names. And in your holy name, God. Amen and Amen. Brothers and sisters, let's take a moment to let God's word sink into our hearts, to think, to reflect on this word, to pray, to offer up our redeterminations, our commitments, that we want to love our God, and we want to love our brothers and sisters in a new way. Let's offer our prayers.